Thank you everybody for tuning in to the INSOL Young Members Group COVID Coffee Break. My name is Robert Peldan and I am the head of restructuring and insolvency practice at Borenius Helsinki, Finland. Today we have a stellar team of young insolvency professionals discussing topical insolvency issues. In our top-notch coffee break team, we have astonishing Anne from Germany, charming Clarissa from Austria, and last but not least, gentlemanly Georges Louis from France. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves. And as always, ladies, go first.
Okay, hi, my name is Anne. I used to work for the German law firm Gurk, and I recently just switched jobs and now working for the French insurance company AXA. And I'm also currently the co-chair of the Young Members Group together with my friend, Georges Louis.
Hi everyone, I'm Clarissa Nie, German attorney at law in Vienna, working for Binder Größwang. We're a full-service law firm with 100 lawyers. I focus on complex disputes and insolvency-related matters.
Hi everybody, I'm Georges Louis Aran. I'm partner at Hoche Avocat, a French independent law firm based in Paris. My practice is focused on commercial litigation and insolvency proceedings. And I will also say that I have the great pleasure to be with Anne, co-chair of the Young Member Group of INSOL Europe.
Thanks for the introductions. Now it's time to hold on to your coffee cups and get our Young Members Coffee Break on its way. In this coffee break, we will discuss some hot topics regarding the latest trends on COVID-19. In particular, we'll share our views on questions such as what is the status quo in each country when it comes to insolvency filing obligations? What do the young members vision as the possible impacts and changes in the restructuring and insolvency scene? And how has the COVID-19 changed the young members' professional and daily lives? So the first question is, are insolvency filing obligations currently suspended in your country? What is your expert's opinion on this, Anne?
Well, my expert opinion is, or I can just state that the insolvency filing obligation is suspended at the moment since March and currently until the end of September, but only for those businesses that have viable chances to recover after the corona crisis. And currently it is under discussion to extend this suspension period at least until the end of this year. So how's the situation in France, Georges?
To face the consequences of COVID crisis, French government has taken measures to suspend obligation within the context of insolvency measures, such as filing for bankruptcy, I guess, like everywhere in Europe. This to help companies to face financial difficulties resulting to the lockdown period. But those measures of suspension had a deadline on 23 of August. So as no postponement has been granted so far, the common law is now back in force. This means that since 23 of August, each company in cessation of payments, meaning that this company is unable to meet its current liabilities with its available funds, has 45 days to file its declaration of cessation of payments. So whereas the financial difficulties didn't stop with the expiration of the deadline, basically with the end of August, we expect in France after 7 of October, so in 1 month, an increase in bankruptcy filings.
Okay, that's interesting because actually that's the first country I hear of that actually has already ended its suspension period, which at least in Germany is unthinkable at the moment. So how is the situation in Austria?
Yeah, I mean, unlike France, Austria suspended the obligation to file for insolvency due to over-indebtedness until the end of October. Illiquidity does not allow to suspend the filing. This is the second suspension that was put in place. And this is because during the crisis, many corporations ran into an over-indebtedness, and at the same time, it was more difficult to assess whether a positive continuation prognosis would be possible. So there was a risk that a lot of corporations would be liquidated under value because restructuring proceedings would not have been successful. How about you, Robert, and Finland?
In Finland, the possibility for the creditors to file bankruptcy application against a debtor for receivables that have incurred during the COVID-19 crisis have temporarily been removed. This temporary amendment to the Bankruptcy Act is in force until end of October. There has been no changes to the Restructuring Act. However, the liability for the management to file for insolvency remains the same. But Finland does not have any specific rules on wrongful or fraudulent trading, so the point of time when the management should act and file for insolvency is pretty vague.
Okay. It's interesting, actually. It's quite heterogenic, the view that we have now for our 4 countries. So maybe I will ask you, Georges, because you're the first one where the suspension period already ended. Are you expecting a lot of insolvency cases now, beginning of October?
Yeah, as I mentioned it, after 7th of October, we expect an increase in bankruptcy filings because you don't have any suspension period. So you have to file for bankruptcy. And this has a huge impact on the economic market. But what we can see as well is an impact on the lawyer market in a way. This market has been quite active since the opening of the lockdown period and after the release of the first governmental measures to face the COVID crisis. And it's still active. Basically, many business law firms try to attract their lawyers to reinforce or to diversify their practice. And I guess they anticipate the needs of their clients, especially in terms of restructuring skills. So what we see on the French market, it's a move of lawyers specialized in insolvency proceedings, recruiting by UK or US law firm mainly. What we can also see is the creation of boutique dedicated to insolvency in order to answer to the legal needs for this challenging period. That's one of the impact on the legal market.
Okay. So Clarissa, how is the situation in Austria?
Well,
I have expected that a lot of insolvency cases will hit your law firm, for example.
Well, I looked at some numbers prior to our webinar, and I have the impression that everyone's monitoring the market at the moment. So in Austria, the number of insolvencies decreased by 25% compared to the year before, with a substantial decrease in April and in May. But there's a real turmoil to be expected in autumn when the suspension period ends. And projections foresee that due to the fact that many corporations might not be able to repay the financial support provided due to Corona, for example, in the tourism industry, a default of 15% is expected. The number of insolvencies will increase by the end of next year by 20%. In comparison, or to put that in perspective, for the US, the number is as high as 57%, for example.
Okay. And Robert, how is the situation in Finland? I mean, the tax authorities paying back VAT tax should help, right? Are you expecting that eases the wave, so to say, or not really?
Well, the state has provided an ample amount of subsidies in many forms. The state-owned organizations like Business Finland are loaning monies and providing grants. So furthermore, the tax authority, as you said, is paying back the VATs from the first quarter of 2020. And finally, the tax authority and employee pension insurance companies are agreeing on voluntary payment plans. However, the effects of the state subsidies and these other plans which I mentioned, what is their effect is still unclear. To my understanding, it has provided some temporary relief, but has not actually resolved the problem because the companies are in there's many companies which are in dire straits. Basically, we're just kicking the can down the road. The voluntary payment plans with the tax authorities and the pension companies are coming to an end during this fall, and solely the tax authorities, they have around 30,000 voluntary plans that will fall due within a couple of months. So it is certain that a host of companies cannot make the payments on time, and this will certainly have an impact in the insolvency statistics. As also in there has been some recruiting in the insolvency markets, not only in the law firms, but also in some banks and insurance companies.
Okay, I agree that the state subsidy, so to say, might be an issue in the sense that we are not seeing insolvency cases now, but we'll see a lot in the future. That might also be beyond restructuring, basically, that have been dragged along, so to say, and will maybe then have to enter just a wind down proceeding and not a restructuring proceeding. That's what I would say for Germany as well. And combined with moderate interest maybe of investors to invest in companies that have an unclear business case, also maybe in tourism industry that is maybe one of the unclearest business cases at the moment, that could actually mean that we are looking towards a huge wave of like wind down proceedings and not really restructuring proceedings. What would you guys say? What if that is true? Let's take that as an assumption. What will that change for the restructuring? What does this mean for the restructuring community in future? What's your view? Maybe Georges, what do you think?
I think that the difficulties connected to the COVID crisis to restructure business could lead to certainly a decrease of restructuring cases, and those difficulties could have an impact as well on investors such funds or banks. I can see that maybe they will put aside their interest in companies needing to be restructured because of a fear of not being paid at the end of the day, or fear of not finding a financial advantage like they had before. And in this vicious circle, companies in difficulties will not find financial support and will go straight to liquidation instead of restructuring process. And due to the same difficulties, we can maybe also expect a decrease of takeover proceeding, as the bankrupt company and the IP will have no time to organize the bidding process because of a lack of cash, definitely, to pay all the expenses during the observation period. So basically, no more restructuring cases, no more possibilities to sell some assets or all the assets to find a way to resolve financial problems. For sure, or in the short term, that's all leads to a glory period of liquidation proceeding and only liquidation, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's true. Just M&A, so to say, market and the restructuring market could be at stake. So what's your view, Clarissa? Is that what you're fearing as well, so to say?
I mean, I think we will see much more just liquidation proceedings, because restructuring proceedings might just not be successful, because a lot of corporations do not have a prospectus to be restructured, and certain industries will suffer substantially. And I mean, from an overall perspective, this has also an impact on our profession, because younger colleagues will probably not be able to learn in a restructuring, but also only just work on a pure bankruptcy case, which can be detrimental to your continuation as a lawyer and as an attorney.
I definitely share this, because I think especially the younger crowd, young professionals, will maybe be in a situation where they can only exercise their job on wind down cases, and maybe will find themselves in a situation in 5 years not being able to do any restructurings because yeah, there wasn't any. Robert, what's your view?
Well, in Finland, as in many other countries, the problem is that companies file too late to the insolvency proceedings, well, especially the restructurings. And as a matter of statistics, 2/3 of the Finnish restructuring applications have been filed after there is already a bankruptcy application pending. So now that the tax authorities and the pension funds cannot file for bankruptcies, this will certainly not make things much better. So there's a risk that also that there's a change of culture away from restructuring towards bankruptcy cases and liquidation and fire sales and the management they're not pressed to make any decisions or take appropriate actions to file for restructuring. So this also would mean that that many of the companies which would actually then file for restructuring at the end of the day are left in a situation that they're actually beyond restructuring and repair. So I am fairly certain that there are going to be loads of insolvency cases during the upcoming fall and winter.
Yeah, I think it's a bit sad because I think the entire European community and also the legislation has in the last years moved away from this pure liquidation and wind down culture, which was also the case in Germany, towards a more restructuring friendly environment, also driven by more like American views, so to say, and the common law backgrounds. And it seems, at least that's the feedback I can hear from your side, that there could be a trend towards backwards, so to say, which is sad in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of back to the future.
Yeah, back to the future. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, back to the future or looking into the future. I think everyone's life has changed. Thanks to Corona or because of Corona. I would like to hear or know from you what has been your best or your worst Corona experience, and what do you expect in future, how your daily life, professional wise or on the private side of the equation, will change or has changed. Maybe Rosalie, you were just speaking anyways. Do we want to continue on that?
Okay, so in my daily life, I may be a better father, a better spouse, more at home, more available for my kids and my wife, which is great, I cannot deny. And in my professional life, on the other hand, I see a new era of communication with clients, with your staff, with your team, with your colleague. And I also see a decrease of, unfortunately, a decrease of human relationship, and therefore new challenges at work. What I experience at work, it's that you have to put in place all the tools to imagine and to develop and to maintain social relationship within your team. And it's difficult as well to find a way to be part of a team. And I have a fear for the young generation to find their place in their own team, especially if they have to be at home and to stay at home most of the time, and if they have to discuss with their colleagues only through Teams or Zoom. So this is really a challenging period, but it is also a challenging period to build up your network, as you cannot freely meet your clients anymore. So you have to imagine as well the way to find and to meet your client. That's maybe the good part, I reckon. So let's see what will happen in the future.
I agree. I guess the challenge for young families really is how to get work and watching or keeping the children at home. How to manage this, especially if you have no grandparents close, or if the grandparents are maybe shouldn't be watching the kids because you have a risk that they could get Corona while traveling to your place, or because the children are sick. That could always be COVID-19, right? So you're not comfortable leaving the kids with the grandparents maybe as well. So Robert, what's your view? What has changed?
Well, on a positive note, now I have the possibility to work from the summer house and also explore Finland. Which has loads of beautiful landscapes and remote locations. However, Finland is pretty expensive, and I really like traveling. And let's say if I'm looking at some hotels sites where we've been traveling before, it doesn't really ease the pain. What comes to the professional life, it's hard to work effectively as a team when everybody's somewhere else than at the office. And lastly, I'm not a big fan of back-to-back Teams meetings, but I guess this is something that I have to cope with since this is going to be the new normal.
That's true. On the other hand, what I really enjoyed is that you're less inefficient in a way. You're traveling less, you're spending less time in traffic jams, and also sometimes meetings are more productive when you have them online because people are limiting themselves a little bit, and you just use the time you have to really talk on the topic and not around things. I think that's a good side also. I mean, we could keep that maybe in future as well, just being more aware of the time you're spending in meetings, and also the availability of everyone on such a physical meeting. Is it really necessary, or could we maybe do a workaround, be more efficient? I think that was, at least from my side, I enjoyed that as well, even though you're right that it can be difficult to involve everyone in a team in a remote way. So Clarissa, what's your takeaway?
Well, no, I agree. I mean, COVID provided us with the opportunity of different workspaces. I mean, if you don't have kids yet, then it can be much more quiet at home. It can be more efficient. So, and here in Vienna, at least my experience is that law firms do not provide home office solutions to younger lawyers. And I account myself as a younger lawyer. And so we see a great development on that side. At the same time, it's of course more difficult to stay close, but we managed quite well through MS Teams and sharing our work product and sharing our time. And on the personal side, I would say a major benefit is that I learned how to properly cook.
That's awesome. Maybe next time we can meet all at the same place and enjoy a meal together. That would be great.
Yes, that I really miss.
Yeah, I guess everyone does. Okay, I guess we're at the end of our webinar. We would like to involve all people of INSOL Europe, especially the young members, to join us in this discussion. We prepared a questionnaire that will deal with the questions we were talking about in this webinar as well, and would like to get your feedback on those topics. The link can be found just next to the video. And you will have the chance. The questionnaire will be open for around 6 weeks, and Georges will give you then an update on what will happen with the answers on the questionnaire in the next step.
So what we have also in the pipe and for the young member groups, it's a tremendous event which will close the annual Congress. We are pleased to announce you that thanks to Harriet Taylor and our sponsor, the annual drink reception of the young member group has been transformed into a webinar on 29 of October with a wine tasting session. So be present at this webinar. First, because a wine tasting session through Zoom is definitely once in a lifetime experience for sure. And because we will communicate on the next events organized by the young member groups, especially the joint event with Asia. Our last word for our sponsor, many thanks Chibe and Kollegen and Robert Chibe for your support in the beginning, since the creation of the young member group. So see you all at the virtual annual Congress.